All right, in this segment, we're going to talk about the mood of the country. We're going to talk about presidential polls and some other things going on in presidential politics in this country. Now, I'm not always a big fan of the horse race type of political news coverage. How many points ahead is this candidate over that candidate? That's what so much corporate media coverage is, especially in an election year like this. But it's important sometimes to do the party news thing. And so in the balanced media diet pyramid that I propose, party politics is an important part of it. And so let's take a look at a recent set of polling that came out in January of 2024. Looking at several important questions in the country. So this was polling done by Harvard Capps Harris. And it was a poll looking at several important trends in the United States right now, such as people's opinions about the economy and whether they're optimistic or pessimistic about the year to come. The status of a very important independent challenger for the presidential race this year, Robert F. Kennedy Jr., and also the latest developments surrounding Joe Biden and Donald Trump. And so we'll talk about this a little bit here. One of the first parts of it that I found interesting is that most voters say their current personal economic situation is fair or poor, and you see that where there's approaching half think that the economy or their personal economic situation is good or excellent, but there's more than half that don't see it that way, that are in a fair or poor situation. But then what's interesting, and this is sort of a psychological commentary, I think, on humanity, is that most people remain optimistic that over the next year things will get better. So it's just an interesting sign that you still see 45% of people are optimistic. More Democrats are optimistic, which I think is interesting, rather than Republicans. Independents tend to be really evenly split between optimism and pessimism about their life over the next year. Men are a little bit more optimistic than women, too, which is interesting. Now let's get into the presidential campaigns. And you see that Biden's approval remains quite low. In fact, it's been slightly, steadily getting worse, although, you can see here at 41% is about the worst his strong disapproval has been. And his strongly approve is about as low as it's ever been as well. There's only 20% that strongly approve of him. So you have twice as many in the country strongly disapprove of Biden than strongly approve of him. And those are people that their opinion will not likely change in the next 10 months or so. Moving forward to talking about RFK Jr., as I promised, it's interesting to see that he is actually the political figure in the country right now with the greatest net favorability ratings at plus 18. Trump is right at even 0. A lot of people don't like him, a lot of people do. You can see Biden is definitely underwater in this particular statistic. The least popular person, there's a lot of unpopular people, but look at Joe Biden's son, Hunter Biden, with negative 41%. That's not a lot of favorability right there. Now, partly because Biden and Trump are so unpopular, you see that a huge majority of Americans think we should have a third choice. It's 64%. Country needs another choice. And then you see Trump is leading pretty comfortably, both with and without people allowed to say, I don't know. If you force them to pick one, which is a big part of our system, force people to pick one or the other, Trump goes down to plus 6 rather than plus 7 when people are allowed to say, I don't know, or I want to pick somebody else. Then you find what happens when RFK is brought in. Now, Trump is still certainly winning, but you see it gets quite interesting, and when you force people to pick one or the other, you see RFK has been gaining quite significantly on Biden recently, up to 21% versus 36%. I guess the question that has to be asked is, will Biden turn out to be the spoiler? If Biden got out of the race, RFK could probably win. That'd be one way people will look at it. I did say in a previous episode that I would keep viewers of Red, White, and Blind updated on the latest on RFK Jr.'s candidacy. And this is because his candidacy is so poorly covered in the corporate media. Either he's ignored or he's denounced. It's actually very similar to what I saw with Ralph Nader and Bernie Sanders in previous journalistic endeavors of mine, how they were covered. And so I know his candidacy deserves more coverage than it's getting. First of all, I thought it was interesting. One of the main shows that is in the balanced media diet that I recommend is called Breaking Points. It's run by Crystal Ball and Saigar Enjeti. It's sort of an independent news show that has a conservative-leaning independent and a more liberal-leaning independent, and they cover the news from a variety of perspectives, which I find often interesting. I don't agree with it all the time. One of the things they did, utilizing some of their contributions from their members, is they did a focus group on Kennedy voters, and they focused in independent voters, Democrats, Republicans who were supporting Bobby Kennedy Jr. in Michigan. Let's take a little bit of a look at that focus group.
This is a focus group, and despite all of this posh setup, what this really is a conversation about stuff. It's about your views on various things. You've all got one thing in common: Robert F. Kennedy Jr. Now, one by one, I want you to just tell me about your story of where you ended up there.
His announcement was phenomenal. I thought it was one of the best speeches I've heard in a long time, and I thought it addressed something real. I'm hungry for a change, and I want leadership.
I also saw the pitch for his campaign opening, but I was looking at it more toward legacy and the views that I grew up with. So it was a little bit deeper for me that the Kennedy family would throw a candidate in there that would fulfill what the past Kennedys have and work for all people.
Legacy and the name, and for change and for the people, because I do not like, our other potential candidates.
RFK, I smiled when I heard his name. I can just hear my mom talk about and smile every time JFK came up. So I just knew they were a good, supportive, rounded family. He seems very confident in what he talks about. And he's listening to views from other people. I'm not for Biden. I'm definitely not for Trump. But I'm for the people, just like RFK is for.
To me, he's a strong person, and he's going to be willing to take on the establishment, to take on the military establishment and some of the entrenched political organizations that are running our country. He's proved himself in his legal profession, standing up to big pharma and doing, working on pollution, environmental issues. He's got his legacy of his family, and some of it's tragic. So good for him for standing up and making a go at it.
I think I was on the internet on Facebook or something, and they put up that he was running, and I was like, dang, that would probably be really cool, to come back like the Bushes, now it's the Kennedys. I think it would be a good idea for him to run at this time when everything is going down. He will probably help the economy a little bit more as far as, because it's basically going down. Even though they saying everything is going up, it's going down. And I just think overall, the person he'll be a good fit.
I didn't actually know about him until a random episode of Joe Rogan. He was on it, and I actually heard about him several times before, but he's mentioned as like a crackpot or whatever. It's really hard to lie for 3 hours straight about yourself to put on a facade. And I look at Trump, I don't really see integrity there. I see manipulation. I look at Biden, I don't even see substance there. I see a guy who is enough of a figurehead that a party can use. And in RFK Jr. it just looks like, for the most part, that's a lot of integrity.
Let's think back to how you voted last time. So I want a show of hands if you voted for Biden last time. Okay, and then hands down. And then show of hands if you voted for Trump last time. Third party? Mm-hmm. Okay, we've got a pretty big mix then. Let's have the Biden voters share hands again. So Shannon, why not Biden this time?
His health, his age. I mean, he's. I don't think he's capable to do another 4 years. Maybe a year, but not 4.
Okay, Conche, quickly from you as well. Hesitations about Biden. Why not this time?
Why wouldn't I vote for him this time? I didn't want to vote for him the last time. So that's why I didn't really stand behind what he was talking about. I was more Trump. And like I said, I was persuaded to vote for Biden because he was Democrat. So like people that's around me, they only vote Democrat. So if you get to talk about voting Republican, then now you got to go through, well, I voted this because that, and then you don't want to go through that. So you just go ahead on and stick by and vote for what you know. You know, I just really didn't like how the economy got crippled a little bit to me. It's like they brought us up to bring us back down, and I just don't like it. Like everything has got risen up, like the way where you stay, everything you eat, the things you buy is just high, and it just doesn't make any sense now, you know.
For me, although I think he's very knowledgeable in politics from his past history, I just think at this point, close to 80, I have older parents, and we deal with caregiving and different things. Not saying that they aren't all there physically and mentally, but I'm more concerned about his health taking a toll. It taking a toll on him and not being able to make the best decisions that a younger candidate could.
Is it the Democrats you're going off of, or is it Biden?
It's Biden. For me, it's Biden.
Trump voters, tell me why not Trump this time?
Even from day one, I thought Trump would be good for policy and getting things done. That's why I voted for him initially. And so I think he did that, but I also, with that came his personality. You know, he's known to be abrasive. And then there was a lot of obstruction and a lot of, I want to say, I saw him getting, you know, he's constantly being under duress, including now with all the lawsuits, with all this stuff. There's so much drama going on. So to me, it's a distraction. And even though I know he's an effective person in getting stuff done in the leadership end, but he just alienates people on the road, and he can create the divisiveness that we have in this country now.
There's a lot of drama, and we don't need the drama. I just feel like between Kennedy and Trump, I'd actually be okay with either, but I would give Kennedy my vote because we really need to be for the people. And I don't think Trump was as informed as he needed to be. And Kennedy is really thorough, and he's standing for the things that are extremely important to this country.
My final question, can he win? Can he win in November?
I hope so.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
My fingers are crossed, yes, he can.
It's going to be hard.
It's going to be tough, but he's got a good fight.
Yeah, he's running against two.
I mean, he's running
79-year-olds.
against a reckless, inhumane individual in somebody who's incompetent.
But see, they've been voted for before, so you really can't say that. If y'all already voted for them before, they can win again.
I think he can win.
But I think we just didn't have the other options that we needed. And now maybe we have the candidate that we'll side with.
Final word, Nick, can he win?
Big challenge because of the system. But yeah, he can. I think he's got a chance.
One of the things that's really interesting is that you see how they've come to Bobby Kennedy from different places. And one of the key takeaways, I think, from this entire focus group is the symmetry by which RFK Jr. is pulling votes almost equally from Trump and Biden. It's almost as if there's dissatisfaction across the entire electorate of the United States. It's just that most people don't know about Bobby Kennedy Jr. And as they get to know about him, then they go and support him. And it's happening equally on both sides. Now, there's slightly different reasons, right? There's slightly different appeal to people that are Republican-leaning, maybe conservative thinking, versus Democrat-leaning, who, you know, ostensibly were liberals. Now, while he's pulling votes nearly symmetrically from Republicans and Democrats, it's the Democratic Party that is most heavily going after Bobby Kennedy. They actually have hired a number of big-time law firms to go out and actually fight the Kennedy campaign's attempt to get on the ballot in states across the country. One of the biggest problems with the political system in this country and why the two parties have such a lock on power is how difficult it is even just to get on the ballot in many states for a presidential or a congressional race. And so the Kennedy campaign has raised a lot of money. They've actually done fairly well, and they've taken a whole chunk of that money and just hired lawyers themselves to go and try in each of the most important states, starting there, to get on the ballot one by one. But what's interesting is the Democratic Party is now trying to oppose them and to prevent RFK from getting on the ballot. The other thing that the Democrats have done to make it difficult, in addition to, as I mentioned in the last episode, denying him Secret Service protection, which is, I find, unconscionable, really, given the history in his family and the history of assassinations and the history of giving any serious presidential candidate Secret Service protection, that they've denied him that. But you see in the corporate media, especially the Democrat-leaning media, a lot of stepped-up attacks against RFK Jr., calling him an anti-vaxxer, calling him whatever name they can to try to undermine his support. Well, there you have it. That's a little bit of the mood of the country right now in politics. That's our Party Politics segment for today's episode. Leave a comment below if you have a strong preference for Biden or Trump or RFK Jr., or if you think there's going to be a fourth or fifth candidate, or somebody's going to replace one of these three candidates as a leading candidate in November. Well, that's it for Red, White, and Blind this time. Thank you so much for joining us. Please balance your media diet, go out, talk to somebody, read something that you're uncomfortable with, broaden your mind, exercise your free speech, exercise your freedom of the press, say some things, write some things, share them with me, share them with others. That's all we have for today on Red, White, and Blind. I might be right, I might be wrong. Call me crazy if you're lazy. That's how I see it. We'll see you next time.